Father kicks out wheelchair-bound daughter under pressure from new wife. 9 years later, she returns a millionaire. Emily felt the tears burning her face as her father, Richard, pushed her wheelchair out of the house. Jessica, her stepmother, watched from the doorway with crossed arms and a cold smile on her lips. "Dad, please don't do this to me," Emily begged, gripping the wheels tightly to try and stop the movement. Richard avoided looking into his daughter's eyes. His hands trembled as he kept pushing the wheelchair toward the gate. "It's better this way, Emily. You'll stay with your Aunt Margaret. She's better equipped to take care of you." "Equipped?" Emily shouted. "I'm your daughter. You promised Mom you'd take care of me." The rain began to fall, wetting the already tear-soaked face of the 16-year-old girl. Jessica stepped closer and placed a hand on Richard's shoulder. "Honey, you're doing the right thing. Think of our baby on the way. Emily needs special care we can't provide." Emily felt her heart shatter even more. A baby. Jessica was pregnant, and she was being discarded like old furniture. "I don't need special care, I just need my dad," Emily sobbed between cries. Richard finally stopped pushing the wheelchair. For a moment, Emily hoped he'd change his mind, but he only crouched beside her. "Emily, my dear," his voice cracked. "I love you, but if you loved me, you wouldn't be doing this," Emily interrupted. "Richard, the taxi is here," Jessica announced, pointing to the approaching car. Emily looked desperately at the house where she'd spent her entire life, the house where her mother had cared for her with so much love before passing, the house that now rejected her. The taxi driver got out and helped Richard load the wheelchair into the trunk. Emily was carried into the back seat, her backpack with a few belongings tossed beside her. "Aunt Margaret is expecting you," Richard said, handing an envelope to the driver. "The address is in there, the fare is covered too." "Dad, I forgive you," Emily said, locking eyes with him one last time. "But one day you'll regret this." Richard closed the taxi door without answering. Emily watched through the rear window as he walked back to the house where Jessica waited. The rain now poured heavily, as if the sky wept with her. During the ride to Aunt Margaret's house, Emily tried to process what had happened. Just 6 months ago, Jessica had entered their lives. At first, she seemed kind, but everything changed after the wedding. Small cruelties began. Comments about how much it cost to keep a cripple at home. Dramatic sighs whenever Emily needed help. Whispered conversations with Richard about the burden he carried. Emily wasn't a burden. She'd been born with a condition that affected her legs, but her mind was sharp. She loved studying, especially math and technology. She dreamed of becoming a programmer, creating apps to help people with disabilities. But Jessica had convinced Richard that Emily would disrupt the new family they were building. And Richard, the father she loved so much, had chosen his new wife over his daughter. The taxi stopped in front of a modest house in Queens, New York City. Aunt Margaret was already waiting at the gate, her round face wet not from the rain but from tears. "My dear girl," she said, helping Emily out of the car. Come inside." Aunt Margaret's house was small but cozy. 2 bedrooms, a living room and a kitchen that smelled of fresh coffee. A far cry from the spacious home Emily had grown up in. "I've set up Jennifer's old room for you," Aunt Margaret said, referring to her daughter who'd moved out after getting married. Emily was taken to the room. It was small, but it had a window overlooking a tiny garden. Her aunt had gone out of her way to make it cozy, with fresh sheets and even some empty photo frames on the dresser. "Aunt, I'm so sorry for—" "No apologies needed," Margaret interrupted her. "You're my niece, my sister's child. Mary would never forgive me if I didn't take care of you." The mention of her mother made Emily cry again. Mary had passed away 3 years ago, the victim of a sudden illness. Since then, Richard had grown distant, burying himself in work and solitude, until Jessica came along. "He kicked me out, Aunt. My own father threw me out of the house." Margaret sat on the bed beside her niece and hugged her. "I know, my dear, but you'll see, everything will be all right. We'll figure it out." But Emily knew nothing would be all right. How could it? She had lost her mother, and now she'd lost her father too. She was in a strange house, relying on the kindness of an aunt who could barely make ends meet. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. That first night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the last few months. The signs had been there, she just hadn't wanted to see them. Jessica's visits becoming more frequent. The dinners where Emily was subtly excluded from conversations, the future plans that never included her. And then came the day Jessica moved in for good. Emily still remembered the fake smile when her stepmother said they'd be one happy family. But Jessica's happiness didn't include a wheelchair-bound stepdaughter. The humiliations piled up. Jessica complained about the extra work Emily caused. She criticized the expenses for physical therapy. She sighed dramatically whenever she had to help with anything. Richard, blinded by love, didn't notice or pretended not to. Whenever Emily tried to talk to him, Jessica would appear with some urgent need that required immediate attention. The final straw was when Jessica announced her pregnancy. Suddenly, all the plans changed. Emily's room would be needed for the baby. The money for physical therapy would be better spent on things for the coming child. And Richard agreed to it all. The next morning, Emily woke to the smell of coffee and fresh bread. Aunt Margaret had prepared a hearty breakfast, trying to lift her niece's spirits. "Eat, my dear. You need to keep your strength up." Emily nibbled half-heartedly at a piece of bread. Everything seemed tasteless. "Aunt, I don't want to be a burden to you." "A burden?" Margaret nearly choked on her coffee. "You'll never be a burden, Emily. Don't ever say that again." "But you work so hard, and now you have another mouth to feed." "I'll manage. I always have. And now we'll manage together." Margaret worked as a seamstress from home, doing alterations, repairs, sometimes even custom pieces. She didn't earn much, but it was honest work. "I can help," Emily offered. "I know my way around a computer. I can do spreadsheets, organize your clients." "That would be wonderful." Margaret smiled for the first time since Emily had arrived. But Emily had bigger plans. She wouldn't just be an assistant. She'd prove to her father, to Jessica, to everyone, that she wasn't a burden, that she had value, that she deserved love and respect. The first week was hard. The house wasn't wheelchair-friendly. Emily had to learn to navigate tight spaces, relying on her aunt more than she liked. At night, when Margaret was asleep, Emily would take out the old laptop she'd brought and study. Coding, web development, digital marketing, anything she could learn online she devoured. But reality soon set in. The laptop was too slow to run the programs she needed. Her aunt's internet was limited, and Emily didn't have money to invest in better courses or equipment. That's when she met Mr. Walter. It was a Thursday afternoon when Margaret received an urgent order, a suit that needed adjustments by the next day. The client was Mr. Walter, who owned a small tech business in the neighborhood. "Emily, can you jot down the measurements while I pin it?" Margaret asked. Emily grabbed the notebook and started writing. But Mr. Walter noticed the open laptop on the table, lines of code on the screen. "You code, young lady?" he asked, surprised. "I'm learning," Emily replied shyly. "What language is that? Python?" "Yes, sir, but my computer is too slow, so progress is hard." Mr. Walter grew thoughtful. They chatted a bit about technology while Margaret worked. Emily showed impressive knowledge for someone self-taught. "You know, I've been needing someone to help with simple tasks at the company. Nothing too complex, but they'd need basic coding skills. Would you be interested?" Emily felt her heart race. "But I use a wheelchair." "So? The work is all on the computer. You could even do it from home if you prefer." Margaret stopped what she was doing and looked at the man. "Are you serious?" "Very serious. I can start by paying per project. If it works out, who knows? It might turn into something steady." Emily could hardly believe it. An opportunity, a chance to prove her worth. "I accept. When can I start?" "How about Monday? I'll stop by to explain the first project." That night, Emily barely slept from excitement. Finally, something good was happening. She'd have a chance to show what she could do, but the universe seemed to have other plans. On Saturday morning, the phone rang. It was Richard. "Emily?" His voice sounded strange, heavy with emotion. "Dad!" Emily felt a mix of hope and anger. I wanted to see how you're doing." "How I'm doing?" Emily couldn't hold back the bitterness. Well, considering I was kicked out of my own home by my father. Emily, it wasn't like that. Wasn't like that? Then what was it, Dad? Explain it to me. Silence on the other end. Jessica said it would be better. Jessica said, Emily exploded. Since when does what Jessica says matter more than your own daughter? She's pregnant, Emily. I have to think about the baby. And me? Don't I matter? 16 years as your daughter and I don't matter? That's not... Yes, it is. That's exactly it. You replaced me, threw me away like I was a broken object. Emily hung up, shaking with rage. Margaret, who had heard everything, came to hug her. He doesn't deserve your tears, sweetheart. I know, but it hurts so much, Auntie. So much. Monday arrived, and with it, Mr. Walter. He brought a borrowed laptop for Emily to use since hers couldn't handle the work. It's simple, he explained. I need you to organize a client database, create categories, filters, that sort of thing. Emily dove into the work. It was basic, but she did it so meticulously that Mr. Walter was impressed. In 2 days, she hadn't just organized the database, but created a far more efficient search system. Young lady, you've got talent, he exclaimed when he saw the results. Thank you, Mr. Walter. When's the next project? I already have something in mind, but first, how much do you want to charge for this one? Emily had researched market rates. She knew she deserved at least $500 for the work, but she was afraid to ask for too much and lose the opportunity. $300 is fine, she said hesitantly. $300? A job like this is worth at least $800. I'll pay you $600 now, and if the next one is just as good, I'll pay the fair price. Emily could hardly believe it. $600. That was more than Aunt Margaret earned in a week of sewing, but the joy was short-lived. That same afternoon, Jessica showed up at Margaret's house. She was as elegant as ever, her pregnant belly still discreet under an expensive dress. What do you want here? Margaret made no effort to be polite. I came to talk to Emily about her father. Emily appeared in the living room, her wheelchair creaking on the worn floor. If you came to apologize, save your breath. Jessica smiled in that fake way Emily knew so well. I didn't come to apologize. I came with a proposal. What kind of proposal? Richard is suffering. He misses you. I convinced him that maybe we can find a solution. Emily felt her heart race but remained cautious. Go on. We're thinking of hiring a maid, someone who can help with the house and take care of you. That way you could come back. Take care of me. I don't need anyone to take care of me. Emily, be realistic. You need help with a lot of things, and with the baby coming, we won't have time. So the proposal is for me to come back as what? A maid who needs another maid. Jessica sighed dramatically. I'm trying to help, but if you'd rather stay here living off charity... Living off charity? Margaret stood up, furious. This girl is my family. She's not here out of pity. Of course, of course. Jessica picked up her purse. But the offer stands. Richard said Emily's room is still empty, for now. The veiled threat didn't go unnoticed. The room would eventually be for the baby. Emily was being offered crumbs to return to her own home. You can tell my father, I don't need his charity or yours. Jessica left, leaving a heavy tension in the air. You did the right thing, my dear, Margaret said. That poisonous snake. But Emily wasn't so sure. Part of her desperately wanted to go home, to have her father back, but not like that, not as a tolerated burden. The projects with Mr. Walter continued. Emily threw herself into them, learning more and more. In 2 months, she was already developing small apps and creating basic websites. The money she earned helped with household expenses. Margaret protested, saying it wasn't necessary, but Emily insisted. It was her way of contributing, of not feeling like a burden. Then came the big opportunity. Mr. Walter arrived one October afternoon with a huge smile on his face. Emily, remember that app you made to organize deliveries for Mr. John's bakery? Yes, I do. Is there a problem? A problem? Girl, Mr. John showed it to a friend of his who owns a pharmacy chain. The man wants something similar, but much bigger, and he wants you to develop it. Emily's heart raced. But I've never done anything on that scale. I know, that's why I had an idea. How about a partnership? You develop it, I'll support you however you need. We split the profits. You'd do that for me? Emily, you have talent, a lot of talent. It'd be foolish of me not to invest in you. The project was challenging. Emily spent days and nights working, studying, learning. Margaret worried about her niece's health, but Emily was determined. Auntie, this is my chance to be someone. You're already someone, my dear, with or without money. You know what I mean. And Margaret did. Emily wanted to prove to her father, to Jessica, to everyone who had underestimated her, that she had value, that she wasn't a burden. The app took 3 months to develop. 3 months of intense work, sleepless nights, frustrations, and small victories. But when it was done, it was impressive. The owner of the pharmacy chain was so satisfied, he paid double the agreed amount. And more, he recommended Emily to other business friends. Suddenly, Emily had more work than she could handle. Mr. Walter suggested they formalize their partnership and start a small business. But I'm only 17, Emily reminded him. Your aunt can be your legal representative. We'll talk to a lawyer, do everything properly. It was a dream coming true. Emily Wilson, CEO of her own tech company. Even if it was small, even if it operated from her aunt's living room, it was hers. But not everything was perfect. On a rainy January morning, Richard showed up at the door. He looked different, thinner, with deep bags under his eyes, his hair disheveled. Emily, he began, his voice choked. What do you want here? Emily kept her voice cold, despite the tightness in her chest. I need to talk to you, please. Margaret appeared behind Emily. Richard, you've got some nerve showing up here. Margaret, please, I just need a few minutes. Emily looked at her aunt, who reluctantly nodded. 5 minutes, that's all. You get. Richard stepped inside, clearly uncomfortable in the small house. He sat on the edge of the couch, his hands clasped. The baby was born, he said. A boy, Ethan. Congratulations, Emily replied dryly. Jessica, she changed after. The baby was born. She's obsessed, doesn't want anyone near him, not even me. And what does that have to do with me? She said it was my fault, that I have defective genes. Because of you. Emily felt as if she'd been punched in the gut. Defective genes? She's paranoid. She keeps examining Ethan all the time, looking for signs he might have problems. Blames me, blames you. And why are you here? To blame me too? No. Richard stood up, desperate. I came to apologize. Emily, my daughter, forgive me. I was an idiot, a coward. You kicked me out, Emily interrupted. Abandoned me when I needed you most, and now, because your perfect life isn't so perfect, you want my forgiveness? I know I don't deserve it. No, you don't. Now get out of my house. Your house? Richard looked around, confused. Yes, my house. Because unlike what you and your wife think, I'm not a useless burden. I work, I earn my own money, I contribute. Something you never thought I could do. Richard left with his head down. Emily knew she'd been harsh, but he deserved it. The hurt was too deep to be healed with an apology. The following months were filled with hard work and growth. Emily and Mr. Walter's small business thrived. They hired 2 employees and rented a small office. Emily invested in her education. She took online courses, attended virtual workshops, networked with other professionals in the field. Her name began to gain recognition in the local tech market. But professional success didn't heal emotional wounds. Emily still woke up some nights dreaming of the day she was kicked out. It still hurt to see photos of happy families, fathers with their daughters. Aunt Margaret was her safe harbor. On tough days, it was she who held Emily's hand and told her everything would be all right. Your mother would be so proud, Margaret would say, so proud of the strong woman you've become. It was during one of these conversations that Emily made an important decision. Auntie, I want to buy a new house for us. What? Emily, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You took me in when no one else would. Now it's my turn to give back. They searched for weeks until they found the perfect house. Single-story, fully wheelchair accessible, with a garden where Margaret could plant her flowers. It was in a better neighborhood, closer to Emily's office. Moving day was emotional. Emily had bought new furniture, decorated everything with care. When Margaret saw her new room, complete with the professional sewing machine Emily had bought as a gift, she cried like a child. "My dear, this is too much. Nothing is too much for you, Aunt. Nothing." Life finally seemed to be falling into place. Emily was 19 and already a respected businesswoman. She had surpassed everyone's expectations, especially her own. But the past has a way of resurfacing when least expected. It was a Friday afternoon when Jessica showed up at Emily's office. She was unrecognizable. Her once impeccable hair was dull, her expensive clothes hung loosely on her thinning frame. "I need to talk to you," she said bluntly. "We have nothing to talk about," Emily replied, continuing to type. "It's about your father." Emily stopped. She looked at the woman who had destroyed her family. "What about him?" "Richard is in the hospital. He tried to hurt himself." Emily felt the world spin. "What?" "After I asked for a divorce, he lost it. Drank too much, took pill." "Divorce?" Emily was confused. Jessica sat down, looking defeated. "I met someone else. Someone with more money, more status. Richard found out." Emily's anger was so intense she could barely speak. "You destroyed my family for nothing. Took me away from my father on a whim. I thought he was my chance to move up in life. But he was too straight-laced, too family-oriented. And you got in the way of my plans. I was a child who needed her father. I know." Jessica began to cry. "I know I was a monster, but now he needs you. Ethan is with me, but Richard, he only talks about you." Emily grabbed her purse and keys. "Which hospital is he in?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing, Mercy Hospital was busy that afternoon. Emily navigated the halls in a wheelchair, her heart tight with worry despite all the hurt. Richard was in room 302. When Emily entered, she barely recognized the man in the bed. He had lost so much weight, his beard unkempt, his eyes sunken. "Emily?" he whispered when he saw her. "Is it really you, or am I hallucinating?" "It's me, Dad." Emily moved closer to the bed. Richard began to cry. "My daughter, my little girl, forgive me." "Shh." Emily held his hand. "You don't have to talk now." "Yes, I do. I was a coward, a fool. I let that woman manipulate me. I lost the most precious thing in my life. Dad, your mother must hate me from up there. I promised I'd take care of you. I promised, and I failed." Emily was crying now too. Despite everything, she still loved this man. He was still her father. "The doctor said you'll be okay, physically at least. I don't want to be okay. I don't deserve it. I lost everything, you, my dignity, my son. Ethan? Jessica won't let me see him. Says I'm a bad influence, that I'm weak." Emily felt a fresh wave of anger toward Jessica. That woman had completely destroyed her father. "Listen, Dad, you're going to leave here. You're going to get help, and we'll figure this out together, okay?" You forgive me?" Emily hesitated. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but looking at this broken man, she realized holding on to bitterness would only hurt her more. "I'm working on it, but I need you to work too. I need you to get better." Richard spent a week in the hospital. Emily visited him every day, talking, slowly rebuilding the broken bond. During one of those visits, Emily met Dr. Sarah, Richard's psychiatrist. "Your presence has been really good for him," the doctor remarked. "He talks about you a lot, about how proud he is." "He has a strange way of showing it," Emily replied bitterly. "People make mistakes, Emily. Terrible ones sometimes. But what defines a person isn't their mistakes, it's what they do to fix them." Emily thought about those words. Your father had been wrong, very wrong, but there he was, broken, trying to pick himself up. Did he deserve a second chance? When Richard was discharged, Emily made a decision that surprised everyone. "You're going to stay with us for a while. Emily, I can't accept. You're in no condition to live alone, and that apartment you're staying in is depressing." "But Margaret, we've already talked." "She agrees, but with conditions." Richard listened carefully to the terms. regular therapy, no drinking, helping with household chores, and most importantly, respecting Emily's space and decisions. I accept it all, anything for a chance to fix what I've done. Living together wasn't easy at first. There were too many open wounds, too many difficult conversations that needed to happen. But little by little, father and daughter began to reconnect. Richard was amazed by what Emily had built, her company, the respect she'd earned, the strong, independent woman she'd become. "I underestimated you," he admitted one evening over dinner. "I thought you needed protection, special care, but you're stronger than I ever was." "I had to be," Emily replied. "I wasn't given a choice." Therapy was helping Richard understand his mistakes, how his grief for his wife had turned into weakness, how he'd allowed Jessica to exploit his vulnerabilities. "She made me feel alive again," he explained in a session Emily attended. "After Mary died, I was lost. Jessica appeared like a light. I was so desperate for that light that I didn't see the shadows she brought." Emily began to understand better what had happened. It didn't justify it, but it explained. Her father wasn't a monster. He was a weak man who had made terrible choices. Meanwhile, Emily's company kept growing. A major contract with a supermarket chain had boosted revenue to levels she'd never imagined. "We need to expand," Walter suggested. "Hire more people, maybe even open a branch." Emily agreed. But she had other priorities too. "I want to create an inclusion program. Hire people with disabilities, give them opportunities." "I love the idea. It'll set us apart." The program was a success. Emily became a reference for inclusion in the local tech industry. Speaking engagements, interviews, and event invitations multiplied. It was at one of these events that she unexpectedly ran into someone, Jennifer, the cousin who had moved away. "Emily, my God, it's been so long." The two hugged emotionally. Jennifer was back in New York City, working as a teacher. "I heard about everything that happened. Mom told me. I'm so sorry I wasn't here. Don't worry, you had your own life. But family is family. And you've always been like a sister to me." They started meeting regularly. Jennifer brought a lightness Emily had lost. They laughed together. Shared childhood memories, made plans. It was Jennifer who dropped a bombshell one Sunday over lunch. "I saw Jessica yesterday at the mall." Emily tensed. "And?" "She's a mess. That rich boyfriend dumped her when he found out she had a son. She's crashing at a friend's place working as a sales clerk." Emily didn't know how to feel. Part of her thought Jessica was getting what she deserved. Another part, smaller but still there, felt pity. And Ethan. He was with her. Such a beautiful boy, but she seemed desperate. Emily grew thoughtful. Ethan was her half-brother, an innocent child who bore no blame for his parents' mistakes. "Does Dad know?" "I don't think so. You two, I need to talk about this." That night, Emily brought it up with Richard. His reaction was intense. "My son, she hasn't let me see my son in months." "Dad, calm down. Let's think this through. She's struggling. To hell with it. She destroyed our family." "Dad, Ethan isn't to blame. He's your son." Richard stopped, took a deep breath. "You're right. But what can I do? She has custody. We can consult a lawyer, see what options you have." Emily was being more generous than Jessica deserved, but she had learned that holding on to hatred only poisoned the soul. The lawyer was clear. Richard had rights. He could request shared custody, especially now that he was stable and Jessica was struggling. But Emily suggested something different. "What if we tried talking first? No lawyers, no fights." "Tuosu, you want me to talk to that woman?" Richard was incredulous. "I want you to think about Ethan, about what's best for him." After much discussion, Richard agreed. Emily arranged the meeting through Jennifer. Jessica agreed to meet, surprised by the initiative. They met at a neutral cafe. Jessica arrived with Ethan, a boy almost 2 years old with his father's eyes. "Richard," she said awkwardly. "Jessica." Ethan looked curiously at the stranger. "That's your father, Ethan," Jessica whispered. The boy hid shyly behind his mother. Emily watched everything from her seat. It was surreal to be there, mediating between her father and the woman who had destroyed her life. "Jessica, let's get straight to the point," Emily began. "We know you're struggling, and Richard wants to be part of Ethan's life." I know I don't deserve anything from you," Jessica said, surprising everyone. "I was awful, especially to you, Emily." "Yes, you were," Emily agreed, "but that's in the past. Now we need to think about the present, about Ethan." The conversation was difficult, tense, but they reached an agreement. Richard would have Ethan on weekends, he would help financially, and with time, they'd consider shared custody. "Why are you doing this?" Jessica asked Emily as they were leaving. "After everything I did? Because I've learned that hatred builds nothing, and Ethan deserves to have a father." Jessica began to cry. "I was a monster to you. I was jealous. You had your father's love, even in a wheelchair. And I never had any of that. We all have our stories, Jessica, but it's our choices that define us." The following months brought significant changes. Ethan began spending weekends at Emily's house. At first he was unsure, but he soon grew attached to his father and older sister. Emily discovered she loved being a sister. She played with Ethan, told him stories, taught him things. The boy didn't mind the wheelchair. To him it was just part of who Emily was. "Sissy," he'd say in his sweet little voice, "go fast." And Emily would race around the house in her chair, making the boy laugh. Richard was unrecognizable. The depressed man had been replaced by a devoted father, a man rebuilding his life. He had returned to work and was taking care of his health. "Thank you," he told Emily one night as Ethan slept on the couch between them, "for giving me a second chance, for bringing my son back." "Everyone deserves second chances, Dad. Even us." Emily's company had become one of the leading firms in the region. She had turned down several buyout offers, preferring to keep control of what she had built. The inclusion program had expanded. Now they had 15 employees with different types of disabilities. Emily had become an important voice in the fight for workplace inclusion. It was at a lecture on entrepreneurship and overcoming adversity that Emily had an encounter that would change her life again. "Excuse me," a woman approached after the lecture. "I'm Victoria Henderson from Henderson Ventures. I loved your talk." Emily knew Henderson Ventures. It was one of the largest venture capital firms in the country. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson." "Victoria, please. I'd like to discuss a potential investment in your company." Emily felt her heart race. An investment from Henderson Ventures could take her business to the next level. "Of course, we can schedule a meeting. How about lunch tomorrow? I have a proposal that might interest you greatly." The lunch took place at an elegant restaurant in downtown New York City. Victoria got straight to the point. "I want to invest $10 million in your company." Emily nearly choked on her water. "10 million? With one condition. I want you to expand nationally. Your technology, your inclusion model, all of it needs to reach more people." It was an incredible opportunity, but also terrifying. Emily would have to give up some control, grow rapidly. "I need to talk to my partner." "Of course, but Emily, let me tell you something. I've seen many entrepreneurs in my career. Few have your determination, your story. You're not just a good investment. You're an inspiration." Emily went home with her head spinning. 10 million, national expansion. It was more than she had ever dreamed. Margaret was in the garden when she arrived, tending to the roses she had planted. "Auntie, I need to tell you something." They all listened carefully. Richard was home too. He had picked up Ethan early from school. "My little girl CEO of a national company," Richard said proudly. "Your mother would be so happy." "But it's so much responsibility," Emily confessed. "What if I can't handle it?" "Hey," Margaret cupped her face. "You're Emily Wilson. You've to overcome things that would break anyone. This is just another challenge." Walter was thrilled with the proposal. "Emily, this is the chance of a lifetime. We have to take it. But we'll have to work even harder. Travel, train people." "So, what, isn't that why we built all this?" After much thought, Emily accepted the offer. The contract signing was an emotional moment. At 22, she was about to become CEO of a company worth millions. The expansion was challenging. Emily traveled often, always adapting spaces for her wheelchair. Each new city was a challenge, but also a victory. Within 6 months, they had offices in 5 major cities. Emily's inclusion model became a benchmark, attracting media attention and interest from other companies. It was during a trip to Boston that Emily received a frantic call from Margaret. "Emily, your father is in the hospital. Heart attack." Emily took the first flight back. Panic gripped her. She couldn't lose her father now, not when they had just reconnected. Richard was in the ICU when she arrived. The doctors were cautious. It was a mild heart attack, but he needs to completely change his lifestyle. Emily stayed by her father's side throughout his recovery. Ethan constantly asked about his dad, and Emily had to stay strong for her brother. "Daddy will be okay," she said, hugging the boy. "He's as strong as you are." Richard recovered, but the scare had been serious. He decided to retire, to dedicate more time to family. "I wasted too much time," he said. "I won't make the same mistake." Life adjusted. To the new reality, Emily balanced travel with family time. Ethan grew up surrounded by love, splitting time between his parents' homes. Jessica had managed to rebuild her life too. She found a better job and was in therapy. Her relationship with Emily would never be easy, but there was mutual respect. Now, it was at an investor meeting in New York City that Emily got the surprise of her life. "Emily Wilson," a familiar voice called her. She turned and saw Daniel, an old school friend, the same Daniel who had been one of the few to stand up for her against bullies. "Daniel! Oh my goodness, it's been so long! I heard about everything. You've accomplished. Amazing." They talked for hours after the meeting. Daniel was a doctor now, specializing in physical medicine and rehabilitation. "I've always admired your strength," he confessed. "You inspired me to pursue this specialty." Emily felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a real connection with someone outside her family. They began meeting regularly. Daniel understood Emily's physical limitations, but more importantly, he saw beyond them. He saw the strong, intelligent, determined woman. "You know the wheelchair doesn't bother me, right?" he said during one of their meetings. "I know. But thank you for saying it." "Emily, you're the most incredible person I know, with or without the wheelchair." Their relationship blossomed naturally. Daniel became part of the family, even winning over Margaret, who was protective of Emily. "That young man has good eyes," she said. "Eyes that see people's souls." The company kept growing. Emily had become one of the youngest and most successful entrepreneurs in the country. She gave talks at universities and mentored young entrepreneurs with disabilities. But the most meaningful moment came on a Sunday afternoon, 3 years after. Victoria's investment. The whole family was gathered for a barbecue. Richard manned the grill, Ethan played in the yard, Margaret and Jennifer prepared the salads. Daniel helped Emily with the plates. "I have an announcement," Emily said, getting everyone's attention. They all stopped what they were doing. "I received an offer to sell the company, 70 million. Silence fell. 70 million? Richard nearly dropped the skewer. "But I'm not selling," Emily continued. "At least not all of it. I'll keep 51% and use the partial sale money for something special." "What?" Margaret asked. "I'm starting a foundation for young people with disabilities who want to become entrepreneurs, with scholarships, mentorship, and financial support." Daniel squeezed her hand, proud. "And there's more." Emily took a deep breath. "Daniel proposed to me, and I said yes." The explosion of joy was immediate. Margaret laughed and cried at the same time. Richard hugged Emily tightly. Ethan jumped around, shouting about a party. "My daughter," Richard said, emotional, "you turned the worst thing I ever did into your greatest strength. Forgive me for taking so long to see who you really are. I already forgave you, Dad, a long time ago." 9 years had passed since that rainy day when Emily was kicked out of the house. 9 years of struggle, overcoming, and growth. The abandoned girl had become a successful woman, not because of the money, though it had come, but because of the strength to never give up, to turn pain into purpose. The wedding was intimate, just family and close friends. Emily entered the ceremony in Nyanstim, her flower-decorated wheelchair, radiant in her specially designed dress. Richard walked her down the aisle, fighting back tears. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "Your mother would be too." "I know, Dad, I know." Jessica was there, invited at Emily's insistence. She cried throughout the ceremony, perhaps finally, understanding the magnitude of what she had tried to destroy. In her speech, Emily spoke about overcoming. "They say what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. But I learned something different. What doesn't kill us teaches us. It teaches us about our own strength, about forgiveness, about the power to turn pain into purpose." She looked at each person present: Margaret, who had been her guardian angel; Richard, who had made mistakes but found redemption; Ethan, the brother she had chosen to love despite everything; Daniel, the man who saw her soul, not her limitations. Each of you is part of my story, the hard moments and the victories. And today we're not just celebrating a wedding, but a journey. Proof that no matter how many times life knocks us down, we can always choose to get back up. The Emily Wilson Foundation was launched 6 months later. The first group of scholarship recipients included 20 young people with various disabilities, all with dreams of entrepreneurship. Emily personally mentored each one, sharing not only technical knowledge, but also her own story of overcoming adversity. "You'll hear many no's," she would say during their sessions. "People will tell you you're not capable, that you're too limited, too different. Use that as fuel." One of the scholars, Michael, who was blind, created an audio description app that revolutionized the market. Another, Ashley, who had cerebral palsy, developed an adaptive clothing line that became a trend. Every success of her mentees was a victory for Emily, proof that she was creating the right legacy. Family life also flourished. Daniel and Emily adopted 2 siblings, Christopher and Olivia, both with physical disabilities. Their home grew even fuller with love and laughter. Ethan, now 11, was the protective older brother. He helped with wheelchairs, played and taught. "Sis," he said one day, "when I grow up I want to be like you." "What do you mean?" "I want to help people, show everyone they can be amazing." Emily hugged her brother, moved. The boy who could have grown up with prejudices had instead learned about love and acceptance. Richard had become a devoted grandfather. He spent hours with the children, trying to make up for lost time with Emily. "A second chance," he once said. "I won't waste it." Margaret reigned as the family matriarch. Her home, the same one where she had taken Emily in, was now the gathering place for Sunday lunches. "Who would have thought," she remarked, looking at the reunited family. "The Lord works in mysterious ways." Emily's company had become one of the leaders in inclusive technology in the United States. But more than the numbers, what mattered was the impact. Thousands of people with disabilities had found opportunities through the company's programs. Barriers had been broken, prejudices challenged. In an interview for a national magazine, Emily was asked about the hardest moment of her journey. "The day my father kicked me out of the house," she answered without hesitation. "But you know what? Today I'm grateful. If it hadn't happened, I might never have discovered my strength." Have you forgiven your father? Completely. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing not to let the past define your future. The reporter asked one more question. If you could go back in time and change something, what would it be? Emily thought for a moment. Nothing. Every moment, every tear, every achievement brought me here, and here is exactly where I'm meant to be. That night after the interview, Emily came home to find the whole family in the living room. Daniel had prepared a special dinner. The children had made drawings, Richard, and Margaret smiled proudly. "What's all this?" Emily asked, touched. "Today marks exactly 10 years, Richard said. 10 years since the worst day of my life, the day I was foolish enough to let you go. Dad, let me finish. That day haunted me for years. But you, my incredible daughter, turned that terrible moment into the start of something extraordinary. And today we celebrate not what was lost, but what was gained." Ethan came forward with a cake he'd helped make. "For the best sister in the world," he said. "Who proves every day that there are no limits for those with courage." Emily looked around. her family, her life, all achieved not in spite of the wheelchair, not in spite of abandonment, but through the strength she'd found in overcoming every obstacle. 10 years earlier, she'd been kicked out of her home, seen as a burden. Now she was a CEO, a wife, a mother, a mentor. But most importantly, she was living proof that the greatest limitations are the ones we place on ourselves. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking, "for teaching me that family isn't about blood. It's about choosing to love every day despite the mistakes, because of the dreams." As they celebrated, Emily received a message on her phone. It was from one of her mentees, Emma Grace, a young woman with Down syndrome who had just secured her first investment to open an inclusive cafe. "Emily, I did it. Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. One day I want to be like you." Emily smiled, replying, "Don't be like me, Emma Grace. Be yourself. The world needs your unique light." That was the true legacy of Emily Wilson. Not the millions, not the company, not the success, but the certainty planted in hundreds of hearts that disability is not inability, that abandonment does not define destiny, that it's always possible to rise from the ashes. That night when everyone was asleep, Emily went to the garden. She looked up at the stars, thinking of her mother. "I did it, Mom. Not the way we imagined, but I did it. And Dad is doing well. We're all doing well. Thank you for giving me strength, even from afar." A gentle breeze passed, and Emily smiled. She knew her mother would be proud. Not for the money or the success, but for the woman she had become. The next day, life would go on. There would be challenges, victories, tough moments, and joys. But Emily would face it all with her head held high, on her wheels that didn't limit her, but carried her wherever she wanted to go. Because that's the truth about overcoming. It's not about having a perfect life. It's about creating beauty from imperfections. It's about proving every day that we are stronger than any circumstance. And Emily Wilson, the girl who was kicked out of her home for being a burden, had become a beacon of hope for thousands, living proof that self-love and determination can move not just mountains, but prejudices, barriers, and hardened hearts. Her story would continue to be told, inspiring generations. But for Emily, what mattered was the present, the family she had built, the love she had nurtured, the forgiveness she had offered. Because in the end, that's the greatest wealth of all, the ability to turn pain into purpose, abandonment into strength, limitation into triumph. And so 10 years after being cast out of her home, Emily Wilson hadn't just returned a millionaire. She had returned whole, fulfilled, surrounded by love. She had triumphed not over others, but over her own limits. And that, dear readers, is the victory that truly matters. The end of the story. Dear listeners, were you moved by Emily's journey? Share in the comments where you're watching from and what you thought of her triumph. Did Richard deserve forgiveness? Leave your opinion. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe for more inspiring stories.